Bonsoir, mes amis. Welcome back to Monaco. Last time we found out the true identity of our master thieves. This time we'll see a bit of the aftermath. So, to many people who have played the game, this level will actually be completely new. If we're thinking about the development timeline of the game, when it was first released, there were only the two campaigns, the Locksmith and the Pickpocket. Around the Halloween timeframe, I believe it was, there was the new campaign, that's October 2013. The new campaign for the Origins missions was added, which gave us the Lookout story where all of the different villains, or all of our different thieves came from. It kind of seemed like a one-off, but it was neat enough. Now, we have the events of Monaco Finn. This was released in February of 2014, and there are 8 missions, each one of which has a corresponding Origins mission. The first one we start with is the Cleaner's mission, which was only coincidentally the last mission of the Origins. The rest of the missions will actually, they won't correspond directly to the same kind of timeline. We won't be working backwards. Difficulty-wise, there was a discussion on the Steam forums when the development of these levels was being discussed. And the main map editor, Andy Nguyen, he had asked the community, how difficult should these missions be? The general consensus is that everything should be just about as difficult as Identity because, well, people love a challenge, right? By and large, this mostly serves as sort of a mixture of classic difficulty and enhanced mode mechanics. You notice we still have a lot of keys in the bottom left area here. There are some of the new assets, such as the diagonal lasers, which they definitely love the diagonal lasers in this campaign. Security-wise, the only real issue you have on this floor is this safe in the piano lounge. The main reason being that there are these 2 rotating lasers here, but luckily, since I'm playing the Cleaner, I can knock out the guards pretty easily. Otherwise, it'd be a little bit more difficult to get through. My best experience with getting through here has been to grab this computer at the top and then grab the other one from the left of the front desk. And that should give you more than enough time to get your viruses up to the top where they need to be. Other than that, as long as you consider the development timeline, you also have to consider what's the timeline of the stories in the game. Obviously, the Locksmith tells his story first, so it's the first introduction we get to the story of the game, but chronologically, what happens first? The Locksmith tells his story first. That's undisputed. It's a pretty simple story, and, you know, it works. It introduces us to the entire setting, but as far as a lot of real meat goes, it's pretty bare. The Pickpocket begins telling his story next. This is where we start getting introduced to the concept that maybe everything isn't as cut and dry as the Locksmith would lead us to believe. However, before the Pickpocket finishes telling his story, at one point, Inspector Voltaire begins questioning the Redhead, and the Redhead tells him her stories. So, chronologically speaking, everything except for the Cleaner's epilogue mission happens before the events of the locksmith story. The Cleaner's epilogue having shortly before this mission we're on now, after the fire. Actually, come to think of it, even happens before the events of Identity. So, sometime between Identity and, well, sometime between Identity and the rest of the Pickpocket's missions, Inspector Voltaire interviews the Lookout. And the Lookout gives her story, and then we hit Identity, and then we hit Monaco Finn, which is where we're at now. Everything now is happening in present time. So, as we're presented with so many different cases of an unreliable narrator, it feels worthwhile to ask, who's telling the truth? The locksmith is almost certainly lying, but the main question is to what extent. The locksmith isn't lying about the events of what happened. Obviously, everything that's here did happen. The thieves did break into the casino. They did go back to the Ocean Museum to help out the gentleman clean up his previous crime, but it seems more as though Inspector Voltaire is just letting the locksmith talk. He's not really being pressed for any significant details. It's just, I don't know, there's not really that much that seems substantial to it. It doesn't seem likely that he can lie. The Lookout basically says, verbatim, "My gambling buddy isn't smart enough to make things up." But if you consider the possibility that the mole is also the locksmith, the mole seems pretty pliable, pretty open to suggestion. And even if the Lookout, or even if the locksmith rather, is not smart enough to make things up, that doesn't mean he's not capable of repeating a story he's been told. It's possible that the locksmith just tells the story he's been told to plant certain seeds of doubt, but he didn't make that story up himself. Probably the gentleman gave it to him to recite. Speaking of the gentleman, just exactly how trustworthy is the pickpocket? As the Lookout says, he puts on a good show, but the truth is there if you know where to look for it. More than likely, the pickpocket story is more accurate than the locksmith story. But I suppose the main question is, to what extent is it more accurate? There are more than likely a good number of embellishments to the pickpocket story. But who knows? Maybe he has more of a plan in mind for when he's making up his stories. I think it's entirely possible that a lot of what the pickpocket said is bullshit as well. The main thing he was not lying about is that the thieves were again at all 4 of these places. Though perhaps his greatest lie is by saying that all 8 of the thieves were there, when I think it's very likely that there are not 8 thieves. So how trustworthy is the Lookout's take on events? She's telling the past mostly, so there are likely records or events of history, the locksmith getting his hand broken, things like that. There's going to be evidence of what the Lookout is saying. But to what extent is she telling the truth? She obviously knows where the cleaner's going to be, or has a good idea, so, well, I would call the Lookout's story mostly accurate, just because those are matters of public record. Monaco Finn is almost certainly accurate since, well, this is happening in the moment. Which raises the question of, why are we back to using 8 thieves? If you go based on the tales of Identity, there are only 4 thieves, and there only have been 4 thieves the whole time, so why the downgrade? It's possible there is for two reasons. One is that using 4 thieves with the ability of 8 thieves is a little bit overpowered, and, well, you still want to be able to keep things a little bit challenging for the newest campaign. The other possibility is that you have to keep in mind that Monaco Finn is essentially being told from the perspective of Inspector Voltaire. Inspector Voltaire still believes there are 8 thieves, so it only makes sense if you're recreating a crime scene, so to speak. You'd look at it as who did what, and since there are 8 thieves, one of them must have been doing something more than the others. But since we're on the topic of the thieves, you have to consider the possibilities. How possible is it that the hacker is also the cleaner? I'd say it's fairly possible. On one hand, you have wildly different personalities. It seems as though every time the cleaner talks, he's always extremely quiet, whereas the hacker is kind of a mile a minute. But you have to keep in mind, too, the only place we know of those personalities is essentially from the lookout and from the locksmith, both of whom could easily be lying. It's entirely possible that the personalities we have for the original 4 thieves are all made up. Still, you have to consider the cleaner is a quiet guy and all of the computer nerds are quiet, right? So he could be the hacker. And considering how the cleaner seems to be knocking people out, which by and large, from what I've heard, is chloroform. Well, you don't have to be a very strong guy. You could be a computer nerd. You could be a computer nerd to use chloroform. As an interesting note, you may have noticed most of the floors we've gone through have not been very burnt out, but now that we're on this top floor, we do see the aftermath of the cleaner's arson party. You may notice in that top area with some of the attention with the 2 computers I got earlier, there's a lot of fire around, so the cleaner's arson didn't finish the job completely. You see, this the entire dining room area is still nicely done, but the recreation hall, the kitchen, the lounge, a lot of this stuff has been burnt out, so this definitely happened. The toughest part of this level, this particular floor, is getting that safe on the table, but what I'd recommend doing if you're having trouble is making your way to that piece of C4 on the dining room table, and that can get you through a lot of trouble. Particularly with being able to blow open the back side of the jewelry display, being able to blow up the safe itself. There's a lot of things C4 can do for you. But I still love smoke bombs. Luckily the last 4 is just a helipad with an easy escape, so that's it for now. Please join me next time when we take a closer look at the pickpocket and one of his hidden away caches.